Hello, this is Archie Dunlop with Talking Astrology with Archie, and it is Sunday, June the 18th, 2023. Today I want to talk about the summer solstice. Now, when I say the summer solstice, I am reflecting my Northern Hemisphere bias. If you're in Australia or New Zealand or South Africa or somewhere else in the Southern Hemisphere, it's kind of the winter solstice, really, because the summer solstice is the time when we have the longest day from the Northern Hemisphere perspective. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, it's the shortest day. So let me just get that bias out of the way. And if you are south of the equator, my apologies. So what does it mean astrologically? Indeed, what does it mean astronomically? We look at the sun from a perspective of the Earth, so we can get a sense of an apparent movement of the sun. Yes, I know that the Earth moves around the sun, but from the Earth's perspective, the sun moves around the Earth, and from the Earth's perspective. So, what the summer solstice is the sun's maximum northern declination above the celestial equator. And it's a precise time. It's a precise time when it hits that maximum. This is the time when the sun moves from Cancer to Gemini. It happens at a precise moment. You know, when you're dealing with signs, there's no cusp. One moment it's in Gemini, the next moment it's in Cancer, with no cuspal period. And I should say I'm looking at it from a Western perspective. In the West, the signs of the zodiac are seasonal. They're not actually related to the stars. And so that's what the solstice is. And the solstice is important because it represents a gateway to some cosmic energy, indeed the whole cosmic energy of our solar system, you know, stuff that's happening on a sort of spiritual, supernatural level. And at that precise moment, the gateway is open, and the position of the planets at that precise moment is somehow imprinted on the Earth, and indeed it's imprinted on your location, and of course location does matter. So, for example, if you're in London, then the summer solstice happens at 3:58 p.m. summertime. If you're in Paris, it happens at 4:58 p.m. If you're in New York, it appears to happen earlier. It happens at 10:58 a.m. If you're in Chicago, it's 9:58 a.m. If you're on the Pacific coast of the United States, it happens at 7:58 a.m. So it does depend on where you are when you're trying to work out what time the solstice happens, and it is a moment when the whole forces of the universe imprint themselves. And what some astrologers do is they set up a chart for that precise time, and they even set up maps for that precise time to see where in the world the different planets are relative to the horizon. Now, the solstice does have quite a dark heritage. I was recently reading or flicking through, what's a book? Robert Graves's The White Goddess. So what Robert Graves was talking about was Celtic mythology, and he talked about the way ancient societies played out the symbolism of the solstice. So if you think about it, the Earth hits its, from a Northern Hemisphere perspective, the shortest day is late December, the winter solstice. And after that, the days get longer and longer and longer and longer until you hit the summer solstice on June the 21st. And so you can almost divide the year into two. You know, one half of the year, the days are getting longer. The other half of the year, the days are getting shorter. And Robert Graves described how ancient civilizations, I mean, he's particularly talking about the Celtic world. You know, I have no idea whether it's true or not. You know, I'm just talking about looking at the symbolism that he describes in The White Goddess. So he came up with the idea that at the winter solstice, a king was chosen, a heroic king. And the king would have a deputy, what he called a tanist. And that king would reign for 6 months. And then at 6 months, this king would be sacrificed in quite a brutal way. His blood would be sprinkled on the members of the tribe. It was a really nasty thing, but it was considered to be something that had to be done for for crops and whatever, to strengthen the tribe. If you've ever seen the film The Wicker Man with Christopher Lee, you might get some sense of this. And so at the summer solstice, the king's position would be taken, after he was dead, by his deputy, by his tanist. And the tanist would rule for the next 6 months, from the summer solstice through to the winter solstice. And then, of course, you can imagine what happens to him at the winter solstice. Yes, you guessed it. He would be sacrificed, and a new king would be chosen, and the cycle would begin all over again. So when you think about the solstice, there's quite a dark element to it. And to continue on this theme, from a magical perspective, if you're into magic and your cult and all that kind of stuff, the time of the solstice, really does matter. I remember in the 80s, early 80s, it was always after my finals at university finished, we'd go to Stonehenge. And there was a free festival, Stonehenge. Hawkwind always used to turn up, and the Druids would show up to celebrate the solstice, and they would take their big day was the dawn on the solstice. But to my mind, that's not really the point. I think the point is the exact time of the solstice, because the time of the solstice is really where the forces of the universe are everywhere. That's the gateway. And so you have to kind of be there at that time and tune into the energy and all that. And that might mean inconvenience. So if you're in London, it's not inconvenient at all. I mean, 3:58 p.m. is middle of the afternoon. You can do your ritual or whatever without having to do anything. I mean, when I say ritual, you can just sit down on the grass and have some nice thoughts, whatever you want to do. Even if you're in Los Angeles, 7:58 a.m. isn't too bad. However, it may be in another year that the solstice happens at 3:10 in the morning. In which case you have to get up at 3:10 in the morning and be there when that moment has come. It's no good waiting until the next morning. You have to, until the sun rises. No, you've got to be there to experience the full power of the solstice. Of course, things aren't as bad as they used to be in the Celtic world. I mean, we're not in a situation where kings have to be sacrificed. This is just now sitting on the grass and having nice thoughts, or whatever else you want to do. As far as the astrology is concerned, let's look at the chart. So this chart is set for June the 21st, 2023, 3:58 p.m. in London. And you can see that the sun is at 0 degrees Cancer. 0 degrees, not 0 minutes Cancer. So how do we deal with this chart? What does it actually mean? Now, I would have said this chart tells us something about the next 3 months, because the next big event is the autumnal equinox, if you're in the northern hemisphere, around September the 21st, 22nd. And that's when the sun moves into Libra, when the sun moves below the celestial equator. So what's it going to be like? Now, I don't think this is a particularly dramatic chart. The main aspect involving the sun, there's sun at 0 degrees Cancer, is probably a quincunx 150-degree aspect between that and Pluto. It's quite a close quincunx, and so I think for over the next 3 months, many of us were going to be trying to express our power and our identity, but something's in the way. It's that Pluto. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's obsession. Maybe it's the awareness that we're dealing with powerful forces that we really can't get the better of. So there is a certain sense of fear there over the next 3 months with this summer solstice. So that's one thing to consider. I also think it's important when you're trying to look at a solstice chart is to kind of get an X-ray vision on the chart. And to my mind, the best way to get an X-ray vision on the chart is to use a 90-degree dial. I'm not going to go into the details, but basically you have a 90-degree dial where you have the 30-degree, where you have cardinal, fixed, and mutable signs. The cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, and so on. I won't go into details, but let me just show you the X-ray vision of the chart. We might get a better idea about how. There it is. Now this is everything put on a 90-degree dial, and so what I'm going to do is, there's the sun, there's the Aries point. You see? Almost. So it's all lined up. And so what actually do we see in terms of that? Now, when you do this, you actually get quite an optimistic picture of the summer solstice, because you can see that there is a Moon-Jupiter conjunction. Actually, it is a Moon-Jupiter square in the regular chart, but this dial turns it into a conjunction. And the Moon-Jupiter conjunction is, and there's Uranus. So the Aries point, the sun in Aries, is on the Moon-Uranus midpoint and the Jupiter-Uranus midpoint. So I actually think that might be quite good. Over the next 3 months, there may be, for many of us, a certain sense of relief. I know the world seems to be ghastly and everything's falling apart, but actually there is something positive to say about the solstice. It may be a time where we may be going into the solstice feeling very worried, perhaps fearful, yeah. By the way, I got a commenter who accused me of being, well, I don't know what that word accuse is right, who said I had too much fear. Do I have fear? I'm just trying to be realistic, but what I'm also trying to do now is be positive. I think there may be a sense of relief, because the Jupiter-Uranus combination, according to Reinhold Ebertin, I think he called it the Thank the Lord combination. So you've got the sun on a Jupiter-Uranus. Many of us may be going into the solstice being very worried about certain things in our life. We may be thinking, how are we going to be able to get through this? And it may be that over the next 3 months, we're actually going to find that there are going to be solutions. Maybe society is going to find solutions. I'm sorry to be positive, but there is something positive that I can see in this solstice chart, so it is my duty to tell you about it. Now, as far as the world is concerned. Now, astrologers, as I said at the beginning, can set up maps to show you how the solstice is influencing different parts of the world. Now, in my experience, these maps are somewhat hit and miss. So when you look at the map I'm just about to put up, don't treat it as gospel. It's just, I'm just telling you what astrologers might be looking at. So I'm going to create a map of the world. There. So that's a map of the world, and so we want to know, where is the solstice starting? How is it impacting different parts of the world? Now, if you look at this line, you can see this yellow line here going through South Africa, going up through Iran and through China. These are all the parts of the world where the solstice is, where the sun was exactly setting at the time of the solstice. So this might indicate perhaps sort of endings. It might perhaps indicate places that have to deal with their neighbours in a political sense. And so this line goes through, is that Oman, goes through East Africa, South Africa. So that's something to look at. There may be issues going on. This is the place where Saturn is on the ice, on the IC, and it goes right up. See this red line goes through Finland, Eastern Europe, the Egypt-Libya border, through Africa. And so you can see right here there's an intersection between the Sun and the Saturn line off the South African coast. Now, it may be that this suggests that things could be quite difficult for South Africa. The next 3 months, perhaps we need to watch South Africa. Cape Town, particularly, well, in fact, I would have said the whole of South Africa, particularly the southern part of the country. That's something perhaps we need to look at. But going up, we can see we've got a Saturn line going through Europe at the time, going through Eastern Europe. So what might that mean? Eastern Europe, that's Bulgaria, Romania, Western Ukraine, some of the Baltic states. So we can put that on a chart. So here is, let's see, get rid of that. So this is a solstice chart set for Westminster. So I'm now going to reset that chart for Bucharest. So let's see, Bucharest being the capital of Romania. So Bucharest. So you see, when you reset the solstice chart for Bucharest, you see that Saturn is on the IC, going right down. If you follow it through, it goes to South Africa, and then you've got Uranus on the descendant. So I'm thinking that this solstice may not be great for Romania. I mean, particularly, I think the precise part of Romania it hits is this crossing is somewhere in Transylvania. But I think you need to look at the whole. You have to look at the whole country. So Romania, Eastern Europe, this solstice could be quite difficult. Governments may find it difficult to keep control of their populations. There may be economic issues. This solstice may be, a time where hard decisions have to be made, particularly in light of what's going on in the Ukraine. So that is a way that you can look at the solstice. So I've probably gone on for rather too long about the solstice. So make the most of it. Have some nice thoughts on Wednesday. Remember, depends where you are. If you don't know where it is, just ask me. Just write a comment. Tell me where you are, and I'll tell you where precisely the solstice is for you, what time the solstice is for your location. But if you're in continental Western Europe, It's at 6:58 in the afternoon on the 21st. If you're in London, in England, it's United Kingdom. It's 5:50. It's 3:58 p.m. If you're in New York, Eastern Coast, it's 10:58 a.m. Chicago, 9:58 a.m. Los Angeles, Seattle, Portland, Oregon, it would be 7:58 a.m. So yeah, you can ask me on a comment if you're somewhere else, if you're in, I don't know, Sydney, Australia or whatever, and I'll tell you. Okay, I hope you found that useful, and happy solstice.